Hello, all. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us for this session today. On behalf of ITC Infotech and Finastra, a very warm welcome to all of you to this interactive session on Treasury yesterday, today, and tomorrow. My name is Sundar Ganesh. I work with ITC Infotech. I manage the Finastra partnership with an ITC Infotech. I possess close to 24 years of experience in the IT services industry, primarily focused on banking, treasury, and capital market space. I am joined by two of my senior colleagues from Finastra today, Pedro Porfirio, Vice President and Global Head of Capital Markets, and Ian Scott, Global Head of Post-Trade at Finastra. Pedro, Ian, it's a pleasure to have you on this session, and thank you for joining me today. With that, Pedro, over to you for a quick introduction, please.
It's a privilege being here. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to work with ITC Infotech. So again, my name is Pedro Porfirio, originally from Brazil. I am an aerospace engineer by formation, but ended up at JP Morgan as my first job. Fell in love with finance, moved back to manufacturing. But my heart was in finance. Went to the US, did a master's there in the University of Michigan, and ended up at a job trading at Lehman Brothers in the early 2000s. So very lucky to have seen a lot of stuff happening. I spent about half of my professional career in trading desks, setting up trading desks, setting up new trading products, and at a point, with Ian, we even had to set up a bank structure for us to be able to transact. I have worked in New York and in London, and I have traded in fixed income rates and FX pretty much. It would be a challenge to find something that I have not touched at a point. About 5 years ago, I moved to FinTech. Very excited. It's a very exciting area. I leverage on my background that I had in banks and in my previous life and doing coding, so it's a good mix. I'm really enjoying it. I was with Calypso. We sold the firm, and then I moved to Finastra to help clients to automate and to get their business going. So very happy to be here, and very happy to that all here listening joined us.
Thank you, Pedro. Ian, over to you for an introduction, please.
Thanks for the intro, Sundar. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good day, whatever it is in your location. So my name is Ian Scott, and alongside Pedro, we work in the solution lead team, trying to sort out the right bit of software and the right solutions for our clients. And I focus on the post-trade process. As Pedro rightly said, we have shared business on probably a number of different occasions over the last 10 years. Pedro was running trading desks, I was running the operations process. I've been doing that for just over 30 years, so quite a long time. Spread from core banking at NatWest when I first started, all the way through custodial banks such as State Street and Northern Trust, and also working on some of the larger sell-side organizations, originally Salomon Brothers and in Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan. My jump into technology is similar to Pedro's. We had a very successful time at State Street running a business and setting a business up there. And then we took the opportunity to move into technology. For me, it was because it was the driver behind my success and the team's success in the career in the 30 years I've been doing this. Without technology, I couldn't possibly have handled the deals that the traders were booking and the requirements that we had in our industry. When I first started, we were writing things by hand. By the time I finished, we were processing 250,000 FX trades a day with only 3 people in an operations team. So technology for me has been the driver underlying it. During my time at Finastra, I've been very lucky to work with Sundar and his excellent team at ITC. We have a very strong partnership, and hopefully today we can give you some examples and understanding of how we see Treasury and how we work together.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you for joining us on this session today. So let me just kickstart today's proceeding with you, Pedro. You've had the opportunity to witness the Treasury business evolve over the last 2 decades. You've seen this as a trader, as a technology and product professional, and now a very successful sales leader. Can you share with us your experience and perspectives on how the industry has evolved and where it is today?
To give a bit of background, when we started Lehman Brothers at the interest rate swaps desk, we priced everything with spreadsheets. And our blotter was manual. It was a manual sheet of paper. And when we had 2 pages, it was a high volume day. Right? So it's very lucky to see that evolving. At that point, we had Summit, and we booked our trades in Summit. And it was very, very telling how you had at that point people in the industry that were creating financial instruments and were managing them and were growing. Then I moved to a German bank, it's called Dresdner in the US, and it was the same thing. At that point, we used Condor, and we built a bunch of stuff on top of Condor to enhance the system, to have it do what we needed to do. I moved to London during the crisis to clean up the books, and I've been here for 10 years. The biggest shock for me moving to technology is that it's in regards to the selection process. The selection process that today we have, it's catered mostly for the large banks that want bespoke stuff and have a lot of complexity in their operations. As that market, we have solutions for that, and we compete in that market, and we have a good footprint on that. And we try to see who else we can help going to the simpler banks, the simpler treasuries. It was very surprising to me that the process fails when we try to deliver something that's usable to the clients. Let me explain. The state that we are today is that when the client wants to select a piece of software, it goes into the RFP process, and it adds a lot of requirements there because people think it's software, I want to have everything there. That triggers a very interesting chain where that implies more software license, that implies a longer implementation, that implies a higher cost, right? And what ends up happening, the banks give up on the project. Or they say, I'm not going to do anything. Or they go into a different approach that they select it, and usually the projects are relatively painful because they focus on things that the bank doesn't need. So we're working to work with you guys on developing something that automates 80-90%. It's a standard, can be deployed at a reasonable price for these smaller banks to start to get into the fold. And to my surprise, we end up failing engaging with clients from a sales and pre-sales perspective because we confuse the clients with complexity when the objective is to go standard. So if you ask me how the industry is today, when you take a look at COVID, people working from home, the difficulty of you having to manage your positions and everything on spreadsheets and having your business done in spreadsheets when you're not sitting side by side with your colleague anymore, I see the demand, the need for the smaller financial institutions for automation, it's greater than ever. You have problems with risk in terms of operational risk, and you're hearing this from a trader, right? Operational risk is a big issue, and you have to automate your operations to be efficient. The other issue that we're seeing that's very interesting is the fact that people were afraid of moving to the cloud, but now people working from home, they're working it as it is hosted on their premises, and they're starting to see that that's very prone to cyber attacks, and you have security issues. So if you ask me what the industry is today, the industry is today in a position to move to the cloud, to get simpler solutions, to get operational stuff as banks as a service. And I think that is a move that can really make a difference on a lot of banks and financial institutions. I hope that's the question.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pedro. I think it summarizes quite well, from the good old days of running the business on a piece of paper to a software, the procurement process, and now, talking about, remote working and cloud. We've come a long way as a treasury business. So Ian, you've seen the treasury business evolve from your extensive experience in the treasury operations side. Can you please share with us your experience of the changes the industry has witnessed in the last few years, and where are we now?
Thanks, Sundar. I think I end up in a similar place to Pedro, which is probably not unusual seeing as we've been working together for a while, but I think I come at it from a very different angle. I had at the time, feel like a misfortune of working at Salomon Brothers when we ran out of money. We couldn't fund the business. We couldn't fund the bank. A chap you've probably all heard of called Warren Buffett eventually rode over the hills and bought the bank for $1. But for a few weeks before that, we simply had no cash. And that's when you realize how important the treasurer is. The guy was running Treasury I'm still in touch with. He's a colleague and a friend of mine. And it was remarkable watching those guys work. And it taught us the importance of what the Treasury does and what liquidity can do for your business, because without it, you're finished.
Yep.
So what I see in the last 4 or 5 years, quite frankly, is people focusing on those core requirements. We've got a lot of complexity in our business. It's a remarkable industry, frankly. But in the last 4 or 5 years, we've had to focus in on basics because profitability has been hard to find. And one of the core things that people have been able to look at is obviously the amount of liquidity, as Pedro rightly said, the risk that's being carried, and how you can cover that with your balance sheet, your liquidity, and your capital base. That's exactly what the Treasury has got to do. And so to me, Treasury's come more front and center again. It's moved back into an area where they can actually get budget to buy technology. It's amazing how many times you talk to people in Treasury departments or Treasury areas and say, we haven't had money for ages. We've been looking for systems. We use a core, we use other technologies, but we really haven't had the opportunity to invest. So to Pedro's point, our focus here has been, okay, what are the things you absolutely need to do your business? What are the core fundamental pieces of information, pieces of data and information you need to do your work? We believe that we found a potential solution for that. But in addition, every organization is slightly different, none are the same. And therefore there is always the bespoke nature which the client is asking for. But our picture, and hopefully we can explain that later today and in this further series that we're planning to do with you guys, is how that can be done in various different ways. So what I see is Treasury coming back to center, liquidity being crucial, and the way in which the balance sheet is managed across all the different areas as being something that people need to focus on. And frankly, I think they know this, and hopefully we're here to help and provide that solution.
Absolutely. And I think from ITC Infotech as a systems integrator, we've been seeing, this industry evolve as well. I remember times when, we go in for an implementation or upgrade of a treasury solution at a customer site. We think, we got it all right. We're going into the UAT phase, and then, the bank would probably bring one of their traders who's been, dealing with the system that they have right now. And about in a week, you would have a showstopper, that, the trader would identify. And that's a lot of learning, and that's a lot of experience that we've gained over many different engagements that has made us become much more sharper and smart in the way, we build our service capabilities, whether it is automation with regards to testing as an area, or automation with regards to your back office processing. These are various aspects that we as a systems integrator continue to look at and continue to improve, so that the solutions that get implemented at a customer site, we want to make sure that it is seamless, it's done in the quickest and the best possible way, so that the bank benefits on their return on investment as quickly as possible. So yes, I think without a doubt, there's been a lot of good stuff that has happened in the industry to where we are today. And Ian, now is the most difficult part, which is the question on everybody's mind: what's the future going to look like?
When I was considering this process, this webinar, this broadcast, I wrote that question down, and as always, no one actually knows. However, I've been doing this a long time, so you can project forward. So to me, the most obvious thing is people need data and they need information, but it needs to be accurate and it needs to be consistent. If you're trying to organize your business, you're trying to run your day-to-day, be it operations, be it trading, be it implementation, right? You need to understand where are you, what's the next step you have to take, and what is the information that helps you to make that decision. That, I think, is exactly where treasurers need to be. They need to know liquidity, they need to understand what's coming up, the risks on their book, the trades that are open, the fails, all of the different opportunities that they have to either create or use their liquidity. So to me, this is, I think, going to be about understanding what it is you require and looking at what your current infrastructure, because people can't afford to just throw stuff away. So they've got to look at their current systems, look at their current infrastructure, look at their current operation. What can they use there? what's available, what's doable, but also how can that be delivered either in a more efficient and more effective, most cost-effective way, or if it can't, is there a different way to deliver that functionality? In my experience, having bought technology for many years, although I would tell you the systems and tell you they're extremely good, actually what I'm buying is functionality. I'm buying the ability to see my data, see a fail, understand the transactions. So I think clients are going to understand what functionality is required, and the delivery mechanism and the way in which that is handled, I think, is going to start being less important. And what's going to be more important is the capability they buy. So I think the cloud that Pedro mentioned in his introduction is going to become more important. As he said, we use it every day. You might not think you do, but everyone does. Microsoft is there, your Excel spreadsheets are there, Netflix is there, right? The things that you use every day, that's actually where we are. So why wouldn't you use that in order to get the data and the information you need to do your business life? Well, you do. And therefore, we need to help clients, A, understand that, but also enable them to use whatever different tools are available. We built some very basic tools we're going to talk through, Infusion Treasury Essential, which we believe give you the core information you need. But that also enables you to take existing data or other data feeds that you may require and put them all into one place so you can deal with that information effectively. So to me, it's about understanding the need, understanding what new functionality or functionality you need to improve, and trying to find that in a place which is cost effective for your business. It's not very exciting, but I think that's where the future sits.
Yeah. Sure. No, I think that's a very interesting perspective on the future. And I think it's pretty aligned to what we are seeing in the market as well. And it's not just hypothesis that's come out of our own viewpoint on what we believe the future is, but also what we see in the industry and talking to our customers. So Pedro, let me get your views on the Treasury of tomorrow, and can you also please touch upon how Finastra is leading the way in helping organizations prepare for tomorrow?
So I think I follow up on what Ian is saying in terms of getting the data and doing stuff. And what we're trying to do has been, I've got to say, rather painful because of the way of the behavior and of the industry and how the whole selection process works, is that sometimes I get into clients that come to us and says, I want the system to run interest rate swaps. And I look at the client and says, well, what do you do? Well, for someone to do interest rate swaps, they're doing bonds, they're doing money markets, they're doing some FX, right? And I said, what are you doing with the other stuff? We're using our banking system with some spreadsheets. And I'm looking and I says, well, that takes a lot of your time, don't it? Yeah. So why don't you automate that, free up the resources so you can get your staff focused on the new stuff? It's remarkable. Maybe 70% of the things that I see is that sort of stuff. I need a piece of software to do something new. I think that is a big, big problem because you get all that staff that's doing the stuff that they're day-to-day, that you can make the point that doesn't add a lot of value. And the stuff that adds value, you don't have the staff with time to do it. You don't expect a software vendor to come with something that sorts out. So you end up with people that don't have the skill set to run that more sophisticated piece of software, and at the same time, they're swamped to their day-to-day stuff. So what we're doing with something like Fusion Treasury Essential is it's really being very, very down to earth with these banks. And when they come with that, we're saying, no, you shouldn't be doing that. I want to sell you software, right? We want you to have our solution, but we don't want to do it to you the wrong way. If you want to do and you want to grow, you need to have your basics right. You need to get your fundamentals right. So this approach I'm doing with you and doing with partners, local partners on that, is to have local expertise on implementation, because that's a big, big challenge. Having a piece of software that works is not enough. You need to have implementation. And having a piece of software that comes and does and frees up your staff. But then the other thing that I see that we're working very hard on that on the commercial engagement, that's very important, is the fact that when I go with a system, right, you go and show something that, and as Ian says, I want this functionality. I want to settle bonds. More often than not, when we engage with clients, they show us how they're doing it. Well, that's fine, but we have a target operating model been working with 800 clients now, and I don't know how many that, on past lives. So why don't you let me show you something that settles bonds? and you tell me if you have a problem with that. So with Fusion Treasury Essential, we're trying to bypass the whole scoping and all that. We're showing, okay, you want to do this. This is how it's done, right? We show the process how it's done, and you tell me if that's right or wrong. One of the biggest challenges on that is that we need C-level engagement. We need senior management engagement to give confidence to the staff that's okay to have the change. Because when you take a look at operations and IT in these places, they have very little incentive to change what they're doing, because if it changes, it goes wrong, right? If it changes, it works, it's fine. If it changes, it goes wrong, they're blamed for it. So there is a huge effort from our end to engage with the senior management of these banks to try to get the process to a better level. And to be honest, I personally think we need to automate. We need to get the financial system more robust. I think having something like this is fundamental, right? And we need to get to that level. So, sorry for the long answer, but what Finastra is doing at this point that we think it's helpful is sometimes say no to our RFP or request from a client that doesn't make sense, and engaging with them to explaining why. And that's why, if you take a look at this, at all software companies that we have out there, Finastra has a team like the team I'm part of. They're industry people that have been in the industry, have implemented, select, and run systems every day. To be able to talk to the banks and explain, be able to have a conversation at the same level, because we suffered. I mean, I can tell you how many times I had to go to home at 2 a.m. because I couldn't reconcile my P&L. Not many people, unless you're running the system, you don't have that experience. So that's what we're doing. We're being, I think, very, and ITC is helping with that. We're being very courageous of going to the industry and saying, this is wrong, you need to reassess, right? And walking away. Because if it's not the right thing for the client, why would we be doing it? What is a very hard thing to do as a software company? I don't know if that answers your question.
No, absolutely. And Pedro, you had the opportunity to talk to a lot of the central banks, which also sort of brings in a level of validation of, what Finastra's solutions do for certain tier banks in the market, right? And what are you hearing from them? And I'm sure, they're giving you a resounding, thumbs up to, what you're trying to achieve in this space.
Yeah, no, one of the biggest issues, if you're a central bank or regulator, is how stable, sustainable, and robust the financial system is. And if I have my tier 3, tier 4 banks, buying some bonds to manage their liquidity or doing some repos and managing that on the core banking system with a spreadsheet, you're not very happy about that, right? And they understand that there is a need to have something that's robust. And they make the request to banks, but then these small banks come back with projects that are astronomically expensive. So you don't have, it's very difficult for the regulator to force the bank to take that. We're giving a chance to people to go with something that's affordable, is simple to use, is tried and tested, that we believe will increase the stability and the financial system will be more robust, right? Because then the treasurers will have confidence on the numbers. And now with COVID times, people working from home, you have a robust, tried and trusted target operating model. But this cannot happen if you go to a small bank that, has a limited budget, and the requirement is for us to do everything customized to what they're doing today, to do basic things that, we know how to do. So it's the balance that we need to achieve.
Absolutely. So Ian, Pedro talked about Fusion Treasury Essential, and he also talked about, why this is relevant to, certain banks of certain tiers in the market, and the fact that, the entire process that, the buying process that customers go through, and how, the solution can, cut through some of those, process overheads and red tapes and get to a solution that works for the bank better. Can you please, share with our audience, what the solution benefits are, more from the processing, the technology, and the operations aspects of what the Fusion Treasury Essential solution can deliver?
Sure. So ultimately, what we looked at was a model, which probably is written behind Pedro, knowing his whiteboards, of how a bank operates. And it's amazing when you draw the boxes and you show people and say, this is how we think you run. How many people go, how did you know that? Well, it's because we've been doing this a long time, and most banks end up doing very similar things. They do it very differently. They've got a different flavor, different client base, but essentially they're processing, the same type of transactions. They're doing FX, bonds, investments, account openings, etc. So we took a look at the core process that happens. Spoke to a bunch of white-haired guys like me who've been doing this a long time, and basically said, okay, if you needed to improve the operation, if you wanted to kind of free up the staff, create the resourcing that we don't have today, what are the things you would try and do? Well, there's two things. Firstly, boring but STP. Can I get the trade all the way through in one go? And secondly, can I ensure that I don't have to reconcile this 50 times during the process? So can I pull all the data from one place so that when I get my information about liquidity, about cash flows, about transactions, fails, whatever I have, I'm confident that the data is there, and the people who work in my organization can then focus on the improved systems that they need to do, the improved processes. The people in these organizations are skilled. They're talented. They've taken a long time to understand how to work the organization, how their customers need, what they're trying to do. All we're trying to do is give them a tool that enables them to find that time. So instead of worrying about, I've got 50 fails, I've got to chase these counterparties, they can say, oh, my fails are in control. I've been in touch with all of these. Now I can look at my complex trade. I can look at the swap my client wants me to do. I can take a look at the NDF that someone has been asking me about. So the talent in their organization is free because the day-to-day standard operating procedures have been completed automatically in the system. I'm not great on war stories, but when I left the London Stock Exchange, I was told when I joined Salomon Brothers that I'd be out of a job in 10 years' time because technology would make me redundant. They wouldn't need my ability and skills in understanding how to process trade transfers. It's 40 years later, I'm still here. And it's because you understand the basics of how things work, and therefore you can help people to understand their process. The volumes are enormous, but the process is still the same. I listened to a podcast from a friend of mine, used to be my old boss, last week, and he's told me the same story as always. Follow the money, Ian. If you know where the cash is and you can count the cash and reconcile it against a third-party statement, you're going to be in good shape. You're going to be in control of your organization. And that's all that we're trying to do here with FTE. It's based on a core set of treasury systems that have been running for 30 years. These things just turn over. They do the job every day. Condor is a remarkable platform, does remarkable things. That's the core of this platform. OPIX, great system. It's the core of this platform. It delivers the information the client needs and enables customers to then do the work to add value and create the revenue uplifts that they require. Plus, it might save them some money. The RFP process that Pedro talks about, we've all suffered from that, right? We spend hours writing the thing, we spend hours reading the thing, and you end up with something at the far end that doesn't quite do what you wanted it to do. It's really frustrating. Look, we benefit from RFPs because we're a software vendor. So do you guys at ITC. We all benefit from them, but actually they've become outdated. So our view here is we can deliver you a specific product in a short space of time at a relatively low implementation cost and get your staff focused on things that add value. That's what FTE does in a nutshell. We've got plenty of documentation. I'm sure we can deliver it to people if they're interested. But that's the idea. And that's not just the idea for us. That's the idea behind all of where Finastra is trying to get to. Provide the core functionality for a customer so they can then add the value that their clients want and the clients pay for.
Absolutely. And I think end of the day, if there is still concerns around, what happens if I want to, get into, doing certain additional instruments or deal with certain additional asset classes, yes, the solution does allow you to do that in a very modular fashion. You could add, what your requirements are as you grow. The whole objective is to, streamline your operations, get your, system working straight through processing, enabled in your system, so that you free up the bandwidth to go and do more things. And the solution allows you to add those more things that you want as you go along. So again, from a ITC Infotech and a systems integrator perspective, there are two parts to this coin. In the sense, you need to have a robust solution that addresses what the customers want, but you also need a capability of how this can get delivered to the customer. and that's where I think ITC Infotech, we've been working with Finastra for a very long time now in bringing in that expertise that we have under the Finastra platform, in being able to offer, how we can implement these solutions in a quick and fast fashion. Fusion Treasury Essentials is a great example, because today ITC Infotech is able to implement the solution in around 90 days, and you have a fully functioning system available to you running in 90 days, and that's the sort of maturity and experience that we bring in as a SI and as a partner of Finastra. Well, I think we've talked about the solution. I'm sure our audience probably are going to be looking at understanding the solution more. If they have questions, please, I would request all of them to reach out to the three of us here on the call. More than happy to connect with them, give them the information that they want. If they have any questions, more than happy to answer those questions. And what we would really encourage is, we don't want to stop this with this being a one-off session, and we intend to do this as a series of sessions. So probably, next time around, we would invite people from the audience, if they are interested to participate in the session. Please do reach out to us. Tell us you are interested, and we'll be happy to have you on this session. And we also plan to bring some of our customers to the event to actually talk about what their real life examples and experience have been with the solutions from Finastra and the implementations, or the services that ITC Infotech has provided to them. With that, I hope the session today was very useful, and I really would encourage all our audience to connect with us, engage with us. If you have any questions, more than happy to take those questions and answer those questions. With that, Pedro, Ian, thank you so much for your time. Pleasure to have you on this session, and it's always a pleasure to work with Finastra, in what we do and how we take solutions to market. And we hope to connect with you again in the next session. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Looking forward to the next session and go over, what the audience here wants to see and hear. What is I love the idea that you guys want to make this very open discussion, a regular open discussion about the Treasury issues. We have a question here from Fabio as well that I will answer later, but it's yes. Corporates are very large corporates have the needs are very similar to banks, and they're very manual, and that's an area where we can help as well. That's a short answer to a long question.
Thanks very much, Sundar, and in the chat as well. The guy I was telling you, or mentioned, but I didn't name check him, who saved our tales at Salomon Brothers, is a guy called Steve Clements. Steve has made some comments in there. Thanks, Steve. Very positive. Good to hear from you. But it is important that people understand how Treasury works. We will have some more podcasts like this, webinars like this, so people can listen and understand, and we'll try and get some more time to answer questions. Anything you need, let us know. We're more than happy to respond. Sundar, thanks very much. Great session, really interesting questions, hopefully interesting answers.
Perfect. Thank you all, and pleasure having you both on this session today. Thank you. And
thank
thanks
you.
for thank you.